and welcome in to another episode of Heat of the Moment. My name is Micah. I am joined, as always, by my fellow host and friend Lino. And Heat fans, no, it's not an old episode. We're back in the play-in again, baby. I believe this is 4 years running now. Unfortunately, this is the second year in a row we're the 10th seed. So our record's slightly better, but the seed has stayed the same. We have a new opponent this time. Sadly, the Hawks and the Bulls have left us behind in the play-in. So we have some new teams to try and vanquish. The first matchup is going to be against the Charlotte Hornets. We will preview that. Tell you all our thoughts and feelings about that matchup and potentially who we could be facing following the 7-8 matchup, and also get to a little end of season review. But we're going to kick it off with some news and notes. First bit of news, Terry Rozier was officially waived by the Miami Heat. If you listened to the last show, it's pretty much what we expected. They waived Terry, and they used his roster spot to elevate somebody from a two-way to a standard deal. That somebody ended up being Jameer Young, who I believe, I'm not a big G League guy, but had a pretty good G League season. I saw he made second team All G League. It's kind of a score-first guard, so we'll see how he develops in the Heat system now that he's on the main roster. I did see it was noted that his deal for next year has no guarantees. So it's not like they sign him to a multi-year deal. He's going to be a mainstay. It's kind of just a prove-it deal with a roster spot. There was no reason not to waive Terry and elevate someone. And I did want to make a quick correction. I thought the deadline had passed to where a team could sign someone to help for the playoffs, but I guess that was just for buyout players. So technically, Jameer Young is eligible to play in the playoffs for the Heat if they are fortunate enough to get there. We will talk about why. That might not be totally likely. And then the only other bit of news, the injury report for what'll be tomorrow's game for us, April 14th versus the Charlotte Hornets, the 9-10 play-in game. Charlotte is pretty much completely healthy. The Heat, a little concerning. Pelle Larsson is questionable, and he missed the Hawks finale. If you've watched the Heat at all this season, Pelle is very important to our team and how we function. So that could be honestly a very big loss if Pelle is not able to play. So keep an eye on that one. Jovic is still out, and Drew Smith is out. I noticed he was in a walking boot. Two guys that might not have normally been in the rotation, but worth noting they won't be available either. But Lino, I guess let's just start with your thoughts on the Charlotte matchup. And again, we've had this conversation before, but kind of where your heart is leaning as far as how you want this to play out.
It's tough, man. I don't want to lose to the Charlotte Hornets. I don't want to be their stepping stone into a postseason that's probably going to be pretty memorable for them as a franchise. It's been rough sledding for the Hornets for a long time now, but towards the back end of the season, they really turned things around and put their foot on the gas, and they've got some really special young talent that seems to be putting the pieces together in the right way. And it's unfortunate that we may just be another step on the staircase for them. And that does not feel good. And so I would like to just beat them so we don't have to feel those things. At the same time, this season feels lost. The lottery feels like the most important thing for us right now and where we end up in that. So if we lose, I'm going to be embarrassed, but I'm not going to feel bad very long, as I will be diving straight into the draft tape and the scouting information we have available to us to see who the next Miami Heat lifer is going to be. So preparing my heart for the worst, but at the end of the day, and we've talked about this a lot, I don't really have it in me to root against us. And so, we'll see what happens. As you can tell, it doesn't sound very excited because it doesn't feel very exciting, but through thick and thin with this franchise, this is one of the thin parts, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel the same way. Like the way you hit on it is perfect. Right now, yes, I want them to lose that game with haste. I want this season over with. But once that ball tips and I see all the guys trying hard, I love Jaime Jaquez had this quote where he was like, I don't know about you guys, but I don't want this season to end. And like all the replies from Heat fans were like, you're right, Jaime Jaquez. You do not know about us. We want this season over. Shout out to, I think it's Etwan Paramore. It's a little pun
Mhm.
on Twitter. I saw he was the first person I saw that had a response like that. But it is true, man. Even watching that Hawks game, there was a little bit at stake there for Miami. Just the Hawks game was the last game of the regular season for anyone that missed it. But potentially, if Charlotte had lost that day, Miami might have been able to move up to 9. But additionally, if other things had gone differently, Miami, if they had lost, might have been able to move ahead of a team like Portland or maybe even the Clippers, I believe, in the lottery standings. So now all of that is still TBD because the actual lottery standings, the last 4 teams won't be determined until we see who makes the play in. But I say all that to say, as I was watching the Hawks game, I think there was a point in the second quarter where the Hawks cut it to 8 or 9. And I was like, well, I mean, if they want to win,
Yeah.
not going to change anything for me. It might help my draft odds. And that's kind of what we're dealing with. For anyone that's unaware, how the NBA lottery works for their draft system is you can only jump into the top 4. So those the famous ping pong balls everyone talks about, that is to determine the top 4 picks. And then everything after that is just all the remaining teams in their draft order. So for Miami, that means right now they're slotted to pick 13th. It seems most likely they'll either be picking 12th or 13th if they don't make the playoffs. So they would have between those 2 spots about a 5% chance or a 7% chance to jump into the top 4. Now, obviously, that's slim, but we saw last year Dallas had about that amount, and they were able to jump up all the way to number 1 to get Cooper Flag. Of course, Heat fans, we'd be thrilled just to jump to 4. And if you make the playoffs, again, like we saw last year, then you lose that opportunity. Then you're completely outside the lottery. You have no chance to move up, and you'd just be getting the 15th pick. And to me, in this draft, which seems pretty deep, it has a lot of high end talent, which means some of its mid tier talent will be more available later in the draft than normal. I do think there's a meaningful difference between pick 12 and pick 15, let's say. So it is hard for me to sit here and say I want them to win because ultimately I think for the better of the franchise, it would make the most sense to lose. And honestly, Lino, and we can kind of transition into predictions and, I guess more a preview. I don't know how much of a chance they have against this
I
Hornets
don't know how
team.
much of a choice we have was kind of
Right.
my feeling going in this. I was like,
So
I
what do
don't
you
think
how
the
do you
destiny's
think
in our
this game's
hands.
gonna look?
I think the Hornets are going to rain threes down on us until we just break. And it's just not going to be pretty. It's not going to be fun. And at least it won't be at home.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
We'll only have to deal with them there.
Yeah, just yeah, and we've had some success against the Hornets, but I feel like there's a couple games we've won against the Hornets where they weren't fully healthy, and I don't think any of those games happened while they were. Well, there was I think we finished their win streak early in like January or February or something like that. Um, but overall, I just don't know that it's in the cards for the way we've been playing basketball lately.
Yeah. For a recap, for anybody that doesn't remember, Miami played Charlotte 2 times early in the season, destroyed them when Charlotte started, 4-14, famously. But then more recently, after they took off, Hero had like his best game of the season. He had like 33. The Heat beat Charlotte, but it was a fairly close game, and the Heat shot, I believe, 47% from 3. So a close win while almost shooting 50% from 3 is concerning. And then the next game, the 2 teams matched up. The Heat got blown out by Charlotte, but Bam didn't play. And if you've watched the Heat at all this season, that's pretty much a death knell. So there's not a ton to take away from regular season matchups, but I'm with you. I think this is a fun matchup if the Heat are playing well because they have a good defense. Charlotte has a good offense. Which way is it going to go? But it feels like for a month now, the Heat have just lost their defense. I mean, they were
Mhm.
a month ago, I think they were 4th in defense. They finished the season 13th in defense. I want to
Wow.
say it's the first non top 10 finish of a SPO defense in like a decade.
Which makes sense. Like we've been watching throughout this. Obviously, it got particularly bad here at the back end, but it was so hard to really accept in my mind that the defense we were watching night in and night out was a top 10 or even top like 6 or 7 defense, wherever they were. And so for it to fall to 13th at the end does at least align with what I was visually seeing on the court, but it does not make me feel any better about what's about to happen.
Yes, exactly. And again, back to our point at the beginning of the show, Pella Larson is a player that would probably feature prominently in this matchup because it's not like the Charlotte has a bunch of big wings you're worried about. It's more their guard sized players with LaMelo, Brandon Miller, and Khan that you'd want Pella chasing those guys around. That also brings up something I wanted to talk to you about that still has to do with this matchup, but it's also a larger topic. So, towards the end of the season, and again, I understand if people weren't watching, but Spo seems like he decided he wants to now go back to starting Kalel and Bam together. And he chose Pella as the player to bench for that, which I thought was interesting. So the starting lineup for I think the last two games of the season, or no, the last game of the season, the other one Fontecchio started. It's a whole other thing. But anyway, they were starting Davion Mitchell, Tyler Hero, Andrew Wiggins, Bam Adebayo, Khalil Ware. Now again, this season, I don't think it was going anywhere. I think it makes sense to try and test out Bam and Ware together this late in the season, I don't totally understand this pivot. And I also don't understand pivoting away from Pella. To me, I would be closer to benching Wiggins in that spot. Like, I think you could argue Pella's been more impactful than Wiggins and does similar things, but Wiggins is a pro and he's a better shooter. And with that lineup, you probably need more spacing. But what do you think about Pella, A, getting moved to the bench, and then B, what do you think about Spo, pivoting more towards the double big lineup again?
If I had to really like diagnose what was happening there, I imagine it's one of two things, if not both. I think Spo has it in his heart and mind that we're going to be facing the Detroit Pistons in a playoff matchup here next week, and he wants that double big lineup, like feeling really comfortable and confident going out there. Two, I think that as an opportunity for growth for Pella to play with that bench lineup, but maybe have a higher usage and play with a little bit more freedom rather than having to play behind, Tyler and Bam as far and other options that would, get the ball before him. I think he gets the ball plenty when he starts, and they let him do a lot, but I could see Spose feeling the same way that, Jaime gets to do in the 6 man kind of role. That could be something where Pele could thrive. So if I had to go best case scenario, it would be one of those two reasons. So the first reason isn't necessarily best case scenario. It's probably more delusion than anything else, but that's Spo. So
Yeah, that's fair. And I do at least like that lineup allows Bam to be on Miles Bridges
mhm.
because he's so big and strong and evil, but that he is able to overpower a lot of our smaller defenders. So I like that Bam will be able to take that matchup, and I assume Ware will be on Diabate. I'm a
Mhm.
little concerned about Ware on Diabate because that's like the hardest playing guy in the league. And as we all know, Kalel can struggle with that from time to time. So
Yeah.
that'll be a tough matchup for Kalel. And then you have options after that. I assume they do Davion on LaMelo, Wiggins on Brandon Miller, and Tyler on Khan, but we'll see. I mean, Khan is a lot of his, damage he does is kind of off the ball. So I think it makes sense for Tyler to be the guy chasing him around. But
Mhm.
he's such a focal point of their offense, they may try and put Davion or Wiggins on him to slow him down. So we'll see how all that plays out. But again, like you said, it's going to probably turn into a 3 point contest. Not to oversimplify it, but Miami's going to have to convert a lot of triples. However, we have seen that you get the Heat in the play-in, and they kind of just rarely lose. They've lost a couple times when they were in the 7-8 matchup, but they've always managed to come out of it one way or the other. If they do come out of it this year, it'll take a road win at
Oh, I see
Charlotte.
what you're doing here. I see what you're doing here. Trying to go for the reverse jinx so that we lose this game. Like, you're trying to get him to miss the free throw so we get our lottery pick. I'm on to you.
You have no proof. You have no proof that that's in the show notes.
I know what's
Um,
happening. I just can't prove it.
reverse jinx and bold at the top. But so if they are able to beat Charlotte, the next matchup would be the loser of the 7-8 matchup, which is Philly and Orlando. I don't think we need to talk a lot about Orlando. 0-5 against them this year. They're kind of healthy. They lost a really rough game against the Celtics when the Celtics played none of their rotation in the last game of the season.
I
But
didn't see that.
again, yeah, it was bad. Like Orlando is the 8 seed because they lost to Boston in that final game, and it was like Baylor Shireman and Luca Garza and like Joe Mazzulla. He can't lose,
I
which
need them to win that game.
Yeah.
more than anything. I do not want to lose. Like, even if I did want the lottery picks, I do not want to lose to the Orlando Magic 6 times in one season.
Yeah, it would be humiliating, and we talked about that on the last show that it sounds terrible, and, like, if any person working for the Heat heard this, they would disown us, but losing to Charlotte feels like a noble death because it's like, it's what everyone wants. Like,
It's like
every
when your little
fan.
brother finally beats you in like a foot race. It's like, okay, well,
Yeah,
we've done a lot over the past 8 years. You guys can
yeah.
have one playoff appearance.
Yeah, and the rest of the NBA wants to see Charlotte play Detroit. Like, nobody
Yeah.
wants to see us knock out Charlotte and then us play Detroit and just get
Mhm.
swept. I mean, that would nobody wants that. So anyway, I say that to say I do think it is unlikely, but if they are able to advance, they'd have the Philly Orlando matchup again. If that's the case and it's Orlando, I would have rather just lost because we could lose against them 6 times. But again, we've been over it. Orlando has a lot of size. Their defense really gives Miami trouble, even though for some reason against everyone else it doesn't look that strong. And then the Philly matchup, it is worth noting. Shams Charania reported today they do not anticipate Joel Embiid will be able to participate in any part of the play-in. He
Oh.
had appendicitis, and so I think he had to have an appendectomy, and so he's recovering from that surgery. So he won't be available. This is gonna sound hateful, and I don't mean for it to, but I almost wonder if that makes Philly a worse matchup for Miami. We saw in the game against Philly most recently where Miami was able to win. Embiid kind of gave them a pressure point to pick at in transition because he just wasn't getting back as quickly. If you replace him with somebody faster, Philly's able to play more small ball, get up and down with Edgecombe and Maxey. It could be a tougher matchup, but I think without Embiid, the Heat would have a pretty decent chance at beating Philly.
Mhm.
Orlando, I don't trust us to ever beat Orlando this season. And then honestly, Charlotte is the scariest of all those teams to me. I think they're the best of all those teams, and that's
Can I
unfortunately who we have.
ask you, we don't have a lot of time before our game, but I feel like we've known who our opponents are going to be for some time now. How much better do you think this team plays with Spo having time to prepare for these opponents? Like, we do pretty well in the play-in tournament overall, and we've had some really close ones, but we've also had some relatively dominant games as well. Some of those are with Jimmy Butler in the building, so this is going to be really different. But we still have one of the greatest coaches of all time. And I just have a hard time quantifying what kind of impact that's going to have in our current scenario and with the current struggles we have with talent. But do you see this team being markedly better and more prepared going into this playing tournament?
It's definitely possible. I think so. There was actually some weird scheduling stuff. There was a chance if Orlando had been the 7th seed that Miami, I believe, wouldn't have had to play until Wednesday. So that would have been ideal to give the coaching staff a little more time to put a game plan together. This is going to be a pretty fast turnaround. But yeah, I mean, they practiced today. I think they'll have a very intentional game plan. But unfortunately, Charlotte's offense, I feel like, is going to be pretty hard to game plan against. There's so much movement. And
Mhm.
I do still trust our defense more than our offense, even though recently that has not bared out as you would see on the court. But yeah, I think there's definitely a chance. I think Spo could come up with some stuff. I definitely remember like some Hawks and Bulls matchups in the play-in where it just felt like, okay, Spo's like outclassing the guy across from him. So
Yeah.
there's
Do you
potential.
do you think Norm and Tyler start tomorrow?
No, I think they're in on Norm from the bench. I
Yeah.
think if I had to guess, they're gonna roll with that lineup I mentioned earlier with Davion, Hero, Wiggins, and then the two bigs, and
Mhm.
then Norm will work in off the bench with Jaquez and hopefully Pella if Pella can
Yeah.
play.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have one last question. This feels like a lot of sports television, like midday television, but in the scenario where we win this game and even the next game, who do you feel like has to have like the standout performance for that to happen? Like, obviously Bam has to play, like, do all the things that Bam does. I think that's just kind of a given. But as far as who actually takes it to the next level, um, do you have a prediction for who could against these particular opponents, or who's just the most likely?
Yeah, I mean, it's a basic answer, but I would go with Hero, because
Mhm.
I think for the offense to work, he needs to excel, And for him to justify being on the court for his defensive issues, especially in these matchups, he's going to have to play really well offensively. And these aren't matchups where I'm really intimidated by who's going to be guarding Hero. You know, Charlotte,
Mhm.
they don't. I think they had Brandon Miller on him last game, who's fine, but not somebody that I see as like a stopper. And then if you go past that, Philly, I mean, Maxi, Edgecombe, like they're fine, but they don't scare me. It really wouldn't be, except for, of course, the Orlando matchup if Jalen Suggs and Anthony Black are healthy. Though those are tough matchups for Tyler. But yeah, long winded. But I do think he would really need to play because he's the only offensive player on the team that I think can really elevate guys around him and create
Mhm.
easier looks for Pella, Ware, those kind of guys.
Yeah. If I had to give an answer that wasn't, Tyler or Bam, I'd probably have to go with Kalel, especially if we're going to be seeing this two-man lineup. Like, if Kalel can make like 4 threes tomorrow early, like that would open up a lot of things for us offensively. It would make things really challenging for them from a lineup standpoint because they would have to find a way to make that stop. And when he's on, I do feel like he gets into a really nice rhythm, and his effort is way higher when he's scoring versus when he's not. So I think if there's anybody that I could just prescribe and hope for like a 25 to 30 point game, um, that would actually be super meaningful for us. Obviously, anybody scoring 30 would be great, but from him, I think that unlocks a ton of things on the floor from a spacing standpoint for everybody else. And I do think we would even look better defensively because he would be trying way harder if he was
Yep.
really involved in that way.
I was going to follow up with exactly where you went with that, which I think Kalel could impact the defense almost as much because Charlotte is such a good offensive rebounding team. It's going to be hard enough to get that initial stop, and I think it's going to be really important that Kalel is able to secure the defensive rebound and then hopefully outlet to kind of our transition attack and hopefully get some easy offense in transition. But yeah, if it's going to be hard enough to get them to miss a couple threes, so I'm really counting on Kalel
Yeah,
and of course Bam to secure those boards.
for sure, for sure. But yeah, that's all I had for the Charlotte Hornets. I really hope you guys, I don't know, man. I don't even know what I'm hoping for.
I
And
know.
damn this franchise for putting me in this situation. I shouldn't be in a situation where I'm confused about whether or not we need to win. Like, we either need to be tanking or we need to be winning.
Yeah.
Our friend Jaron, friend of the pod, big Mavs fan, like very clear on what his goals are this year and has been very comfortable in that. It's been funny to watch him root for his team to lose and rooting for other teams to stop losing as much as his team is, but at least he has a clear conscience about the direction the team is going.
Yes.
This is painful mentally.
No, it really is. And what you're hitting on, it kind of leads into our next topic, was just kind of initial end of regular season thoughts. And I think as I was going through the numbers, I was kind of totaling up like, okay, this is where Miami ranked this year versus last year and all these different stats. And I was like, man, there was like legitimate improvement in a lot of areas that we were calling for improvement in. And yet, at the end of the day, at the end of the season, we get here and I'm like, oh, this team. Like, I feel almost, I mean, Jimmy stuff aside, worse than I did last season because I was just like, this is going nowhere. But unfortunately, it's cumulative. So now it's 2 years of going nowhere.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, from everything we can tell, there is no exit strategy other than acquire the big star. And of course, the Heat, have the inside track to do that, unlike a lot of other franchises. And we can all hope for that. But like you're saying, as a fan, you want something like tangible, like, okay, everybody's on the same page. And unfortunately, for this season and for the last few regular seasons, the Heat's main target has been to be quote unquote competitive, which is equated mostly to mediocre.
Yeah, yeah. I think as far as the question of why does it feel so bad, even though we have been a markedly better team, we shoot better. We've had improvements on offense. We had some really stellar performances from guys. Tyler ended up being pretty good still, despite injuries. Norm, for the most part, had an all-star season. Like, it's been ugly the past 2 months, but that's just not the whole season. And so there's plenty of things that did improve on the court. The team looked better statistically and even just visually compared to the back half of last season. But there's no scenario where being the 10th seed feels good. It doesn't matter what other things are going on. Like, if you finish a season as the 10th seed, it is probably the worst place to feel. At least at the end of the season, if you're 12th through 15th in the conference, then you've got some high hopes for the lottery and you're excited about the future in some capacity as long as you have your picks. There's no reason to feel good about a 10th seed. The organization shouldn't, and I don't think they do. I think everybody in that building should be incredibly frustrated with where we are, despite the improvements. And so that's the thing is that, all these things have to add up to something important. Like you can't
Yes.
just be better for the sake of being better. Like that's great in personal life. Like that's an awesome thing for all of these individual players that have seen growth in their talents. Like we saw incredible things from Bam. We've seen so much growth from Pele and Jaime. And, if a fan is feeling too bad about it, maybe they should really think about those things because there have been, some silver linings to attach to and at least carry over from game to game. But in sports, and particularly in basketball, where every season counts, even though every game may not count, like it all has to add up to the sum of some kind of greater purpose or goal. And we are so far from that goal in either direction. So
Yes.
that's, I think, really the best way to sum up why it feels so bad to be a Heat fan right now.
Yep.
Despite the games, we've had some incredible blowout games. We've seen the offense fire off in ways we haven't seen in ways before. And again, one of our players scored 83 a couple weeks ago, or last night, as I like to say it. It's just always been the night after that game for me for the past month.
Yeah.
But if you finish the season as a 10th seed, it'll just never feel good. And so
I
this organization,
no, I think that's perfectly said, and it's a thought I've had and have been a little afraid to verbalize, but I do think there's like, I guess the best term would be like tanking inflation. You have to bake into these numbers. So there's a
mhm,
lot of different stats. For example, I saw Charlotte this year has the most wins by a ninth seed in the East in NBA history. And I also saw that this season had the most 55 win teams in a season in NBA history. And to me, all of these are hinting at everyone's numbers are kind of being boosted up because we've never seen tanking quite like this. Now, I'm not a historian, but anyone who follows the league knows about a third of the teams from most of this season, whether for injuries or from the get go, have not really actively been trying to win. So, and again, I think that speaks to why, like, yes, the Heat won 43 games this year instead of 37 last year, but they're the 10th seed again because I think every team probably just won a few more that was actually trying because there were more teams not trying this year. So I do think that's why some of the numbers feel hollow because it's like this team
it's true.
quantitatively, like if they matched up with last year's Heat team in a 7 game series, like it would probably go seven. Like I
Mhm.
don't feel like they're like significantly better,
It's
really.
true. It's like one of those Power Rangers episodes where they all have to face off against clones of themselves, and then they have to switch people. I lost myself in that metaphor there, but the point I did want to make was that four teams were markedly worse this year that were better last year. Milwaukee, Indiana. They had their injury problems. They don't have Tyrese Halliburton. Philly is worse. Like they were on a trajectory to be pretty good, and I think that they've been worse. And even like Atlanta and Toronto are fifth and sixth seeds this season, but I don't know that they got incredibly better. I just think everybody got mixed up in the playing level, and it's just kind of how those individual games shook out. But there hasn't been a huge increase in talent in the East. And if anything, there's been a nominal decrease in talent and skill from team to team. And so I think it has been easier for us to pick off a bunch of wins when you play, the Wizards four times a year, when you play Indiana and Brooklyn. It just makes it a lot easier than the status of those teams. And it probably fully accounts for the win share and difference between this year and last year.
Yeah, no, it is true, and yeah, you're right. It's important to note that going into this season, now Boston was a surprise, but most people are talking about like, man, the East, like it's the Cavs and the Knicks, and then like it's wide open now. Detroit took off, Boston was better than you thought, but that still leaves the 5 and the 6 seed that should have been for the taking for a team like Miami, and they didn't even get past the 10th seed.
And it was for the taking. Like again, from the fifth seed, sixth seed, all the way down to the 10th seed. It's 46 wins, 45, 45, 44, and us at 43.
Hmm.
That's four games that if we were a little bit more disciplined, if we really played basketball better, we could be a fifth seed right now. So it's not even that anything about the season stopped us from being good enough to avoid the play in tournament. It's purely on the fact that we did not play good enough.
Yeah. No, it's true. And honestly, from a team, construction standpoint, maybe it's for the best. Like maybe the front office will take a different look at this team. If we had kind of had, let's say this season Toronto did, maybe they would have tricked themselves and have been like, oh, we're building something. So maybe that's the silver lining is that they'll have to take a hard look in the mirror and think, this isn't really good enough. There needs to be some kind of change. And honestly, the change, and we'll have a whole off season to discuss this, but it's probably harder to pinpoint than it's been in the past because previously it was like, well, you got to fix the offense. The offense is terrible. Well, the offense went from 21st last year to 12th this year. They went from 27th in pace to first in pace. They added people to the coaching staff like Noah LaRoche to help with the offense. So there are a lot of things we've been calling for the team did, and yet the needle really didn't move that much. The defense suffered. The defense went from 9th to 13th. There were things in there that they clearly had to kind of take a step back for. And again, the offense was cool, second in points per game, if you care about that. But ultimately, it led to nowhere different. So it's like, well, do you scrap the whole Noah LaRoche offense? Like, what do you take from this? And then we'll have a whole offseason to discuss that. But again, it feels like there was finally change, and it still led us to the same place, which I think makes
Mhm.
it almost doubly disappointing.
Yeah, I don't even know what else to say without just feeling so bad about how the season went.
Yeah,
Despite, we're going to get into our predictions, I suppose. Despite it going kind of how I expected from the amount, how much better I thought we were going to be compared to last year by just fixing a few things and having a little bit more continuity. Despite that, the feeling doesn't feel very good.
yeah. Now let's get into our preseason predictions. We thought this would be a fun way to kind of wrap up the show for everybody to hear how right we were on some things and how horribly wrong we were on some others. So let's start with some good ones. For record, Lino and I both predicted 43 wins, which
It's
was
true.
correct. We thought it would feel a lot better. And I think even on the show, I mentioned that would probably get us the 6th seed. Incorrect, but it was worth a thought. The defense we both thought would slide a little in hopes the offense would get better. I think when we talked about that, we were thinking more in the terms of like playing Tyler and Norm together, which it didn't end up being because of that, but it did end up being true. I thought the defense would be 12th. Lino thought it would be 14th. It ended up being 13th. And that's per cleaning the glass for anybody that sees anything inconsistent on a different website. But so we were around the right ballpark. And then the offense jumped significantly. I conservatively hoped for 18th. Lino said 16th, and it jumped all the way to 12th. Again, thought that would feel better, but there were some nights where it was a lot of fun. So big numbers, I feel like we did pretty well. When we got into individual awards, is where our predictions fell apart a little bit. For MVP, I went with Tyler Hero. Uh, really bold. I can't remember if his surgery had been announced at this point or not. I hope not, but it
I
probably
don't
had.
think so.
And you went with Khalil Ware, which is an upside pick. And some Heat fans would argue you were right, and that Spo just held him back. I would say actual MVP of the season is Bam. What do you think? How do you feel about your Ware prediction? And then do you think Bam is the right choice for MVP?
Yeah, I think there is a bit of collusion. Spo didn't play my guy enough. If he had played the minutes he needed to play, I was really impressed with what I saw from Ware this year as far as a growth pattern. I think he's going in the right directions. He's clearly not all the way there yet, especially with that number one issue being the motor and engine. But he had some stellar performances. When the engine is on, it looks really special. Not the most valuable player, but maybe if value is based on like how awesome it would be if he met his potential, like yeah, it could be up there. But as far as how important he is to winning games right now, it's a little tough
Well,
to
we
what.
said MVP. We did not specify. You might have interpreted it as most valuable prospect, which where
Um,
certainly is.
yeah,
So
I would say so. Though Pelle Larson's also giving him a bit of
eh,
a run for his money there.
my heart certainly. Next up, we had Six Man of the Year, which of course is funny because he ended up having a legitimate Six Man of the Year candidate for the whole league in Jaime
Mhm.
Jaquez. I don't think that's debatable. I went Ware, which I was right in that he didn't end up starting for most of the season. I was wrong that he would have a huge impact off the bench. He was fine. Definitely better starting alongside Bam. Lino went Davion, which you could argue Davion maybe should have been coming off the bench most of the year. And if he had had the season he did off the bench, hey, maybe. But I think this one's got to go to Jaime. Do you have any thoughts on Six Man?
No, he's literally the sixth man of the year across the league for me.
Yeah.
He's been so awesome. Like again, when we talk about silver linings for this season, he is kind of the longest one. It has been really special to watch him play basketball. He's a fun watch. He's probably really the only fun watch on our team outside of Pele and when Tyler's healthy. And so, yeah, I think that was pretty easy to draw up.
Yeah, Jaime's been awesome. I saw a tweet today. I don't mean to call out some random, but he said something on Twitter like, Jaime's shown enough. Like he was the only bright spot of the season. He needs to start next year. And I was like, whoa, he doesn't need to do that. Like, we just figured out a good role for him. Like, we
Some
have
people
a,
are just great six man. Like
yeah,
sometimes you can have a great player running your bench unit. You need
yeah,
somebody. Like you
yeah.
can't just do all your talent in the
It's
starting
a,
lineup.
it's a great role for him. I don't think he's going to get like way better. And so why overtask him? I don't want him being guarded by OG and Anobi. Like, let's let him keep attacking these bench guys and let us win these bench minutes. But anyway,
True.
that was an aside. Okay, this last one was definitely my favorite
Which
to
I
look
have
back.
some contest for, by the
Okay,
way.
I'm excited to hear it. So, our last one is most improved player. Now, of course, this would lend itself to picking somebody that had struggled, which we both did, but we were both wrong. So, the actual winner of this, I feel like, would have to be Jaime coming off a down year. He was excellent. I
Mhm.
picked Nikola Jovic. Whoops. Uh, it'd be one
What's
thing to
the
say he was
opposite of the MIP? Like
yeah, yeah, most depreciated player. I don't know. But yeah, so Nico, I wish I could just say he was hurt, but he was bad when he played. He was bad from the beginning. He was bad till the end. He was hurt at the end.
yeah.
But not to be outdone, Lino came through with Terry Rozier for most
Now,
improved. Tell us your case.
here's the deal. In theory, when we made these predictions at the beginning of the season, it was like, well, he was such a distraction and he was awful last year. This year, if he averages like 7 points a game and like 2 assists and no turnovers, then like that's a huge improvement from what he was doing. Like he had the smallest margin he needed to improve, and then he went to jail for federal charges,
Yeah.
or at least got indicted. Like we don't know the result of that trial, so that didn't happen. But what he did do this season was get us a second round draft pick, which is a
Oh,
market improvement. And no other player on our team has gotten us a draft pick this season. And
okay.
so I think there's still a case to be made that Terry was most improved from where he was and what his impact was on the team last year to the impact that he had on the team this year, in which it did feel much less of a distraction. And he wasn't playing any minutes, allowing people like Pele, Jaime, Davion, all these guys to get in the rotation. And we got a draft pick from him. So
Mm.
that's a lot that he brought to the table for us this year, in exchange for his freedom and all of his money, apparently.
That's honestly a very impressive case you just made because he was such a negative last
It
year.
was so bad last year.
Just his absence is improvement. And then, yes, he opened up minutes for role players, the younger, better guys. And because he was actually arrested in a federal case, probably the only reason we got a second. If Jaime hadn't had such a good year, I I might hear you out on this. That was impressive.
I'm just saying, this is exactly what I had in mind. By the way,
Yes,
this
of
was like,
course.
well, this is what's going to happen. He's going to go to jail, and we're going to have all these things.
Your FBI informant had been like, "Go with Terry Rozier on this." There's
My
some
uncle-in-law isn't the FBI, but he works on like busting drug pins in like rural Mississippi, not
Hmm.
like all of this stuff. We probably got to bleep that out. I don't know if people are supposed to know that.
Oh man.
um, but yeah, we were actually surprisingly close on the statistical predictions, and I'm very impressed by that.
Yeah, I feel good about our wide-ranging predictions. I think I'm gonna go with the same kind of look next year, like use the same uh what would you call it, rubric, I guess, to make those
Mhm.
predictions. And I'm gonna scrap everything for individual awards because that was a disaster. So we'll see.
Now that's gonna
Uh,
be interesting. Like this year, I feel like I had a really good idea of what the team can do. I don't even know where to start making predictions for next year. I mean, we'll be past the off season by the time we make predictions again, but barring any huge changes, I think it really is going to depend on what the rest of the league does. And
yeah.
yeah,
No,
it's going to be
it's
interesting.
true, and the tragic beauty of the Miami Heat is the most logical thing to predict is that the team will be mostly the same. And if that's the case, you could probably guess we'll be back in the 9-10 range at about 500. So,
Sick.
because I mean, we'll do full offseason stuff, and we're kind of rambling now, but Norm's a free agent, Wiggins is a free agent. I would hope the Heat just let both of them walk. I mean, maybe a sign and trade, but like this is not a team that needs to give those guys like big contracts. Like they don't do anything for this roster in any meaningful way. I guess if they were able to like get Giannis and then sign those guys, but that's very pie in the sky. But yeah, if the team mostly stays the same, they lose a couple vets and the young guys get a little bit better where Cass, Pella all improve a little bit, like yeah, we'll probably be right back here. And this was a pretty healthy Bam season. God forbid anything happens to him. Could be really
Mhm.
rough.
Not a good time.
No, and then maybe Tyler will be more healthy next year, but we've said that almost every year with our guy. Who I
Every
still
year
like
except one.
Tyler. Yeah, yeah, the All-Star year.
The
That's the
back
other
half of
random
his season was
situation.
really strong, I thought. The
Yeah.
foot thing was bad, and then him, like, it was just, there's so many things going wrong with the team at the time when he came back that it just really, I think, dampens people's first impression of who he was as a player this season. But once he was like in rhythm and had played some games and not out of the rotation, I rarely came out of games with complaints about what Tyler was doing.
I know. I guess it's just I see things differently than a lot of Heat fans, and I sometimes I think they just like whoever it is, me included. You just lock on to the guy that you blame for most of it, and
Hmm.
Tyler just has really been that guy for me, especially with how little offensive talent is on this team. Like he's super important, especially with Norm in his diminished state for whatever reason. It's Tyler's become very necessary with that,
Absolutely.
but we're rambling, so we can wrap it up. Heat fans, brace yourselves for another play-in. I don't know how it's going to go, and if you're listening, I hope it goes just how you want it to, because at this point, who knows? But we appreciate you guys for listening to us. We hope we can give you some fun off-season content. Like Lino alluded to, we'll definitely be doing some draft stuff. I'm excited to dig into this class. It seems like a really fun one. Hopefully, the Heat will have a lottery pick. May 10th is the actual lottery. Who knows? Maybe they'll move up. We'll be following along with all of that. But in the meantime, hope you enjoy the play-in. We'll talk to you guys afterwards, and we'll either be preparing for a Pistons series or the draft. So for myself, Micah, my good fellow host and friend Lino, thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you guys on the other side.